Evening today. My name is Jesse. I'm from Keyva, and today we're going to be talking about eliminating shadow IT and optimizing your IT provisioning. We've got Anuj Tuli, our CTO, on the line here, and he's going to be walking you through our presentation and demo today. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Anuj.
What? Can we wait for a few Kroger associates to log in?
I think they can join as we get started. 1 second. Let me know if you, Jesse, can you see the screen there?
I certainly can. And just for everybody that's on the line here, we do have a number of people that are joining this session today. Everything is going to be made available as a recording as well. So if you've got folks that you'd like to see this, or that can't join, or that maybe joined a bit late, whatever the case may be, everything will be made available as a recording after this as well. So.
Excellent, thank you. Also a big thanks to Red Hat in helping us put this together. So we're gonna talk about shadow IT. What are some of the causes of shadow IT? What are some of the costs associated with shadow IT, and what can we do leveraging Red Hat's offerings as well as Keyva's offerings to either eliminate or minimize shadow IT. And we're going to talk about the specific use case of provisioning, end-to-end provisioning, and we're going to dive into specific solutions around it. A quick look at the agenda. We're going to go through what are some of the factors that lead to shadow IT occurring, some costs associated with it. Some of them are tangible, some intangible. What are some of the ways to prevent shadow IT? We'll specifically look at one of the ways using these tool sets. I'll go through who Keyva is, what we're about, what are some of the things we do in the market, and then we'll dive into the specific use cases. We'll also have a live demo today for this integration. And then we'll come back and summarize the integration's features and the roadmap. Also Q&A at the end, but feel free to send your questions via the chat in the WebEx as we go through, and we'll take a look at it at the end. Now we'll also have a couple of polls as part of this presentation, so keep an eye out for some of those polls. It's helpful for us to understand what are some of your challenges today. So what is shadow IT and why is it a problem? Gartner believes that by this year, almost 30% of security breaches will happen in infrastructure that is classified as shadow IT. And what that means is this is infrastructure that has been provisioned out there that was not blessed by your organization's centralized IT team. So there's some issues there, and we'll see why that's a target. And there was a study done by EMC a few years ago, which put a number to the data loss and the downtime cost, and that came to 1.7 trillion. Now, given this was a few years ago, I'm pretty sure that the number has only gone up. In fact, I'd wager to say that it's probably doubled by now, given the amount of shadow IT that we see in organizations today. Now, this list is not meant to be exhaustive, but here are some of the reasons why shadow IT happens. And the most common feature that we have seen in talking to our clients is that they say that the IT teams, the centralized IT team within that organization is either too slow to respond, too slow to fulfill the needs, or is just not equipped. That's what it boils down to. Now, you may have users that need specific technologies or platforms immediately, and that may or may not be already ready within your IT teams. Your users may have needs that are complex. They may have needs that require multiple platforms integrated and ready to go on demand, and maybe they have a huge ask that IT is just not capitalized for. There may be lack of automation. This is, again, one of the key reasons we have come across, which is the processes and tools are not integrated within the centralized IT team, and therefore there's a lack of automation, there's lack of scalability on demand. And maybe there's just a lack of awareness of what is actually available via the centralized IT team. Maybe they do have some service that mimics what your users are asking for, but the users are just not aware. And so it's easy to go to, easy to swipe a card and go external to your IT and bypass that process. But then you do not receive standardization. You do not receive the output that is blessed by your IT team. Maybe there's a reason that users are going outside, which is because there are no skills within your own organization to either manage, provision, or maintain some of the technologies that users are asking for. Maybe the pricing options are much better outside. And this can be a double-edged sword in the sense that you don't really know what the total cost is. You do see a per unit cost, but the hardware and software costs may be baked in without you knowing because those units are not specifically laid out. And maybe the budgets within your teams are set up such that every team obviously may have their own budget, but they have also the flexibility to use those budgets as they see fit. And lack of visibility around unit costs, internal and external, actually could be one of the factors that lead consumers to practice shadow IT, because again, they need what they need right now, and that's what happens. And the biggest reason we feel why this happens is because there is no monitoring, in the sense that nobody's looking at who's consuming what and from where. So there's no centralized input. There's no centralized request that comes in that eventually goes through a standardized process. What are some of the costs of shadow IT here? Skipping a couple of slides. So what are some of the costs of shadow IT? And these are, like I said, either tangible or intangible. Software licensing, obviously, you may already have capitalized some of the software. You may have already bought software and licenses for internal use. But when you go outside the centralized process, again, you may not be able to see these unit costs, but these are all baked into the quote unquote lease of the part that you take from outside. The biggest cost, in our opinion, is the regulatory compliance risks. And we just saw that 30% of those shadow IT infrastructure is under risk. Lack of governance, there's no security. The configurations are not approved, and thereby they're not locked. That's where the security risk comes into play. The internal teams have not gone through reviews, and this is just an ad hoc process that happens. So there's additional money that gets invested in terms of hardware spending or software spending, or again, it's all baked in. There's a loss of investment in terms of customization, in terms of the effort, the time that your teams have already put into building this infrastructure that you're going now outside, and you may still have to customize whatever it is that you're consuming to make sure that it's ready for your consumption. There's no documented processes. There's a lot of wasted time and inefficiency. And then there's organizational chaos in terms of what happens if something goes wrong, who's going to be responsible, what happens, who's going to be accountable. So how do we prevent shadow IT? This is one of the ways, which is to have a centralized input mechanism for you to come in for all IT requests, be it infrastructure requests or application requests. And so ServiceNow traditionally, or any IT service management portal, in fact, has been targeted to be used as that input system. So, in our case, we are going to take ServiceNow as that centralized input system, and then Red Hat Ansible to be the fulfillment engine on the back end to fulfill all the IT automation requests that come in. So how do we prevent this? By having self-service automation, by having a centralized request portal. And then when we are setting this up, we are leveraging your existing approval processes. We are not developing anything new. All we are doing is tying in ServiceNow with Ansible. And we are tying it bi-directionally. And we'll take a look at it here in a second. Now, this integration allows your clients to also audit whatever's going on. So that's very important, because when somebody requests a new asset, you want to make sure that it's under the control of the centralized IT team. And therefore, that's how you minimize IT, because now you have minimize shadow IT, because now you have the capability to audit what's out there, who's consuming it, how much of it is being consumed, and so on. So how can Keyva help? Keyva is an organization based out of Minneapolis. Our focus is on DevOps and cloud automation. And we develop intellectual property, IP, and then we also provide services around automation and DevOps. So these are just some examples of the kind of IP we have around ServiceNow and Red Hat. So Servicenow App for Red Hat Ansible Tower, which is, by the way, certified by ServiceNow. So you can go to store.servicenow.com, which is their marketplace, and search for Keyva, and the app would show up. We also have developed an extended Ansible by creating the Ansible module, which allows you to consume ServiceNow capabilities from Ansible. Outside of these two offerings, we have also developed a ServiceNow app for Openshift, again, along the same lines of consuming all IT services, be it infrastructure or the application side, from a centralized ServiceNow portal. So the Openshift integration takes care of the application side. And we also build a number of custom Ansible modules, essentially extending Ansible to and customizing Ansible to talk to some of your internal tools you may have that may not be available out of the box. And one example is pexpect, which is a Unix-based functionality that we have automated using the Ansible modules. We have some services as well. There's an Ansible Guru service where you can just schedule a call with one of our engineers, and they can help troubleshoot some of the common problems you may be having with Ansible. The jump packs are predefined, pre-scoped engagements where, think of them like starter packs, where maybe you want to set up role-based access control, or you want to integrate it to specific or create certain playbooks, things like that. And then there's a service catalog integration capability as well. And there's some which are more focused on the process side of things rather than technology. Today, we're going to focus on these two specific offerings. And so let's take a look at what these are. Both of them combined provide you the capability to bidirectionally integrate ServiceNow and Ansible. Now, for those of you who already know what ServiceNow is, or maybe you don't, it's an IT service management product. It's a SaaS-based offering that has different components within it. So these components are essentially pre-built processes in a way where you can request certain types of records. So change request is a type of request, incident is a type of request, and there's ITIL-based standards that they follow where you can request any sort of a service that can be fulfilled on the back end from ServiceNow. So in our case, what we have done is we have developed this integration that leverages playbooks that you've written in Ansible or you may develop in Ansible, and we provide you a trigger, essentially allowing you to customize when you want that playbook to trigger. When do you want the automation to trigger and from where? So that's the integration from one side of it, meaning consuming Ansible capabilities from ServiceNow. Similarly, we have the component, the southbound module, which essentially allows you to consume ServiceNow capabilities from Ansible. So again, the ServiceNow app for Ansible Tower is an app that's available on the ServiceNow store, and it allows you to consume Ansible playbooks, Ansible automation from ServiceNow, which is called the northbound integration. And then we have extended capabilities, and it's called the Ansible module, which allows you to consume ServiceNow capabilities from Ansible, and it's the southbound integration. And so together, they both provide you the bidirectional capability. And we'll take a look at use cases, why that's important. Here's the most common use case when it comes to leveraging this integration. And this is an end-to-end provisioning use case. And so if you look at what this is all about, it starts from the very top left, the service request swim lane. If you can read the ServiceNow part, we have the end user initiating a service catalog request in ServiceNow. And so your ServiceNow admins would have already defined catalog items, and these catalog items are essentially items that you have exposed as services that end users can come in and request. So a user initiates a catalog item, it goes through specific approval processes for your organization that you have already defined within ServiceNow. So we are just leveraging what you have. We are not recreating or customizing anything on that front. And then the user-based trigger that you define will dictate when you want the Ansible automation to kick off. So in our case, essentially a service request requested by a user on the back end will create a change record. In our case, we're going to provision a new system. So it's going to create a new change record. And then once the change goes to an approved status, that's when our integration will kick off. It'll finish up and automate, essentially use the automation you've built in Ansible to continue provisioning. And this could be virtual machine provisioning. This could be a network device provisioning. This could be an app-based provisioning, doesn't matter. Whatever is automated from Ansible can now be consumed. Depending on the final status of that automation, we would come back and update the service request because we want to make sure the user is notified around what's going on. The end user who's requesting the automation may not really have access to Ansible directly or even the end systems directly until this entire process goes through. So as we go through and keep going through the automation, we are updating the service ticket so that the end user is aware as to what's going on. After the provisioning, the base layer provisioning, we may want to install some software. We may want to apply some patches, things like that. And once that is all done, we will go ahead and create a CI, a configuration item in the CMDB. We may also create relationships between CIs. So, if you create, say, a virtual machine, you want to make sure that that VM CI is related to the ESX CI or whatever else, right? You want to make sure that you can run a report so that when you want to patch that system or you want to decommission it, you can see the impact. That's the idea. So as you create these CIs and CI relationships, once everything is done, you would come back to the original service request and say, hey, everything is finished, successfully close it out, and essentially exit. Now, this is a generic case in terms of what you could do with this integration being bidirectional. The initial part of kicking off Ansible Playbook from ServiceNow is done via the app, and then the update of the ServiceNow tickets via the module, the southbound. So obviously you can customize it to fit your organizational needs, but this is a generic case as to how it all flows through. And this is the use case we'll look at the demo here in just a few minutes. Now, the second most common case that we have seen clients use this integration for is called the closed loop incident process clip. And this is a case where, say, you have your NOC and you have a centralized console where you're looking at alerts, and you want to automatically remediate some of the alerts that you see on the console. But also at the same time, you want to create incident tickets within your ServiceNow IT service management solution, because at the end of the day, you'll be able to see that if you have created 2,700 tickets, 2,700 incident tickets, they're essentially all related to one problem. So let's say your network device went down. but you're getting all these alerts that are saying, hey, I cannot connect to an end server, and you have 2,000 servers. You may receive these 2,000 tickets, but now you want to make sure what's really going on is that it's a problem, and this is an ITIL. This is based on the ITIL framework, where a problem is identified after doing root cause analysis on a bunch of incident tickets, and there's event correlation happening at that point. So, essentially, you want to make sure that a CI that you're taking an action on exists within the CMDB, because your CMDB may not be current. And then if it doesn't exist, you create the CI, and then you remediate the alert, you update the alert, and then if the alert is successfully remediated via automation, then you go ahead and remove the alert from the console. It's an automated process that you can have leveraging this integration, and it's Clip. And you can use this not just on the infrastructure monitoring side, but also on the application remediation side. So let's take a quick look at the demo. As I mentioned, the demo is going to go through the provisioning use case. So what we're going to do is we're going to log into our ServiceNow console. So here's a ServiceNow console that your end users will come in, and they will have, depending upon their role-based access, they'll have access to what's called a service catalog. So a service catalog is what your ServiceNow admins have exposed for these end users to consume in terms of which services are available. So we've created this demo app service. So we're going to open that. And again, this is where you can have the end user ask questions like, what is the app for? Whether you want it as a production instance or a development instance, things like that. You can have them go through a questionnaire and capture some of the information you may need before making that request. So when somebody makes a request, there's something called a fulfillment engine on the back end. In our case, the service catalog has essentially opens a change request on the back end. So we're going to hit submit. What this has done is it's created this change ticket, and we open up that change ticket. So at this point, somebody has created a change ticket, and it now has to go through approval processes. In our case, we have one approver that'll come here and approve this ticket. And then we move it to the next stage, which is the schedule state. Okay, so everything that has happened until this point is leveraging whatever processes you have in ServiceNow. Whatever we have done so far does not require any sort of changes or customizations to use this integration. So and when we install this integration, we essentially defined, it shows up as the Ansible integration here on the left side, and we have defined that specific trigger to say when my change request goes from scheduled to implementation, that's the point that we want to kick off the Ansible automation. So once we have defined that trigger, we would, when this change goes from scheduled to implement, that's the point that the Ansible automation is going to kick off. When I hit implement, and I open up the logs, we can see that a request was kicked off, and you also have the ability to output in the logs whatever you want. In our case, we are outputting what is the sysID that was triggered. So what this did was, on our Ansible instance, so on our Ansible Tower instance, we've defined a job, a template, essentially, which is a playbook that's exposed as a template. And we'll take a look at what that playbook looks like. But essentially what that did was it kicked off the specific playbook on our Ansible Tower instance. And if we look at the kicked off jobs, we'll be able to see the log for what's going on. We can drill down. And while it's going on, what we have done is we have provisioned an EC2 instance in our Amazon cloud account. So if I come in here and refresh, you see the Cloudy app that we requested from the front end there is currently being set up and being initialized. So while that is going on, let's come back to the job section here. What I want to show you is that we are basically passing ServiceNow's record ID to Ansible, which allows Ansible to figure out which specific record to update in ServiceNow once all is said and done. So if I come back to my ServiceNow console and open up the change request we were just looking at, so you see that the status of that ticket, once the provisioning was finished, moved from implement. In fact, it went through a review status, and then once it was successful, it closed. So what we also do is, because we knew specifically with ServiceNow record ID, we were able to come back and that specific ticket with some information coming from Ansible Tower. So in our case, we have used the information of job ID, which we have passed back from Ansible Tower. So if I look at my Ansible Tower job, you see that's 234. That's the same job ID that reflected back on the ServiceNow side. So what this playbook did was it provisioned a new EC2 instance, and then it updated the ServiceNow ticket. And in fact, it's doing more than that. What we're also doing is that we are adding the public key of my user on that new machine, so that the original requester has a way to log into this system, right? It's not just enough to provision a new system. We want to make sure that it's accessible by the end user. So what we can do is we can this new system. What I've done is I've copied the public IP for that new system, and just to show you that you can now log in. So this is how an end user would log in. Obviously, you can be fancy with it, where you can say you can have private keys copied onto that new system as that automation flow goes through, and you can create a non-root user, and then as you can see, you can switch to a root user, assuming it's in that the user is in the sudoers file. Now, we've used the default AMI, the Amazon image for this, but again, this could very easily be your own custom image. This could also be on Google Cloud. This could also be on VMware, on-prem, it doesn't matter, right? The automation is written, the playbook is written in Ansible, and we are essentially consuming it from the ServiceNow side, and then making sure the ServiceNow request is updated while all this is going on. So we've essentially now closed the ServiceNow ticket, and we have finished this process. Again, you can customize your ServiceNow request as well. You can say, instead of the status of the ticket, I want to trigger this based on, maybe it's based on a short description, or maybe it's the value of assigned to field. You have full flexibility in how you customize and the trigger you define, and at what point you want that trigger to happen. And then a quick look at the playbook. What we are doing is we have this playbook in Git, and we are calling this playbook when ServiceNow triggers, so that if you go in and make a change to this playbook on Git, the next time the workflow runs, it'll pick up the latest version. So you don't even have to set up any sort of or make changes on the ServiceNow side. This is all driven via a source control playbook. So as I mentioned, this is certified by ServiceNow. And why is that important? Well, multiple reasons. One is that traditionally, any IT service management team usually locks down their system heavily. So they don't want to consume anything external, and they may take a lot of time to write customizations within their own platform. So what this allows us to do is, because this is available on the store and certified by ServiceNow, it's easier to say to your ServiceNow team, hey, this is already certified, just download it. And it's a seamless process for ServiceNow admins to download integrations directly from the store. And it's an easier sell, if you will, to the ServiceNow team because it's already blessed by ServiceNow. So they don't have to do any coding. They don't have to do any sort of development or worry about compatibility. For example, we support the latest Orlando release of ServiceNow that came out in early Jan. We certified against the Orlando release. So for ServiceNow doesn't need to worry about how they will make a call to Ansible. All they need to do is download a free trial and point to the specific workflow, the specific playbook that the infrastructure teams say is going to handle the automation. There's some optional services that we provide with it. Essentially, the integration hooks are ready to go, but if you want to develop an end-to-end use case around it, the way we just saw, say a provisioning use case or any sort of clip automation, that's what you can leverage some of the services for. We can help integrate this solution to other third-party systems. So although this specific offering is for ServiceNow, we have done engagements where we have triggered Red Hat Ansible playbooks from BMC Remedy, which is again pretty commonly used in IT service management domain, and Micro Focus is offering, as well as Surewell, which is also pretty prevalent, which is a SaaS-based offering as well. So there's different IT service management solutions you can integrate this with, as long as all your automation and playbooks reside within Ansible Tower. Some of the features we went through already, but another key important point to note is that this does not require a ServiceNow orchestrator license. So ServiceNow's orchestrator is a separate line item that is an add-on to ServiceNow platform. You do not require that component within ServiceNow to run this integration. This is a scoped app. We are working on adding support for multiple Ansible Tower instances, whereby you can kick off playbooks on different Tower instances. Maybe you want to trigger the dev and pre-prod together, as an example. We also have support for mid-server. So mid-server is a ServiceNow component. The mid-server sits behind the firewall. It's within your inside your infrastructure, because ServiceNow is SaaS. So let's say you want to consume automation Ansible playbook and Ansible Tower is on-prem. ServiceNow provides something called mid-server that would sit within your environment and talk to the SaaS ServiceNow piece. And this is just ServiceNow architecture. All we're doing is we're consuming that architecture so that when you install the app on ServiceNow SaaS, you don't have to do anything else on your side. The integration automatically supports on-prem integration with on-prem Ansible Tower. And then obviously all these products, all the IP that Keyva provides, we not only provide a free 30-day trial, we provide support for that integration. So it's a productized integration whereby consumers can call our support team and ask for enhancement requests, or maybe it's a case where you get stuck, there's a bug, we'll work on that. So it's a fully supported product. I'm not going to go through all these features, but there is, as you can see, a huge list of features where for the southbound Ansible module. So you can consume ServiceNow capabilities around change management, around incident management, essentially anything that resides on the ServiceNow side, you can now consume via Ansible. So, and this includes custom apps. So ServiceNow has the capability to where you can install custom applications, things like inventory management, warehouse management. There's just a number of applications you can consume. The ones you see here out of the box with the ServiceNow platform, but you can add in new custom apps as well. And this integration, the southbound integration, allows you to consume that capability within Ansible, regardless of whether it's a custom app or a native app. So where are we in terms of support? We are working with ServiceNow and Red Hat to make sure that we support not just the latest versions, but also support what they deem to be the best practices guidelines. So for example, ServiceNow recently came out with a guideline saying they're gonna remove support for self-signed certificates within ServiceNow. So that certainly affects all the integrations that ServiceNow has. So our app included, and we are working to make sure that we only support CA signed certs, not self-signed certs. Certainly working also on the southbound integration upgrade. We are planning to have some sample playbooks for the southbound integration so that you don't even have to know how to consume the module. All you have to do is run a playbook. So for example, run a playbook to create an incident, run a playbook to create a change, and everything else, all the features we saw there. We talked about the multiple Ansible Tower endpoints and triggers. Currently, our trigger is based on workflow ID or job template ID, I should say, within Ansible Tower. We are making enhancements so that you can trigger it based on a name. So let's say you have a job defined within Ansible that says integration demo. You will be able to trigger that playbook with just the name instead of the ID. In terms of support, we support everything that Ansible Tower supports until their end of full support status. And there's a list, there's a web page that defines exactly what those versions are. And in terms of ServiceNow, we support the last 3 GA versions. And as I mentioned, Orlando support was added in early Jan or mid-Jan. In fact, we still support London release, which is 3 out, because ServiceNow is still supporting London until I think the end of this year. So as I mentioned, we do offer a free 30-day trial for all the offerings we have. There's also different ways of how these IP products are priced. So just so you're aware, anytime you go to the ServiceNow store and download the trial, it's automatic 30 days, and the only way that you can consume that, at least after the 30-day trial, on the ServiceNow store is a subscription model. But we also have a perpetual pricing model that anybody has questions, we can take it offline. But so what we are doing is we are offering not just the 30-day trial, we are offering an extended test drive to anybody who wants to try this out, including support from our team in terms of how to architect the solution, and if you have specific questions around how to set it up for best practices. So again, this is, as I mentioned, we have done a lot of work integrating IT service management with automation platforms. So even if you have something like Sherwell in your environment, as long as you have your playbooks and automation written within Ansible, we can help you. We can help you design that architecture for an end-to-end provisioning case or any other sort of a case you may have. So feel free to reach out to info@keyvatech.com if you want to take a shot at that extended test drive. So just before we stop here, I want to point you to a couple of additional resources we have. If you check out the ServiceNow store, you can you can check out the bit.ly link of Keyva Snow apps, and it'll take you to all the apps we have available, including the Openshift app. There's also and we can share this slide so that you can check out those links. There's also some documentation and collateral around this specific integration that we talked about today, and we look forward to talking with you either at Red Hat Summit or through our live chat, or just reach out to us if you have any questions or need any help. So with that, I will pause and see if there's any questions and open it up.
How are you doing that? Live or on chat?
I'm sorry?
Are we doing this live or chat?
You can just ask questions live. That's okay. Go ahead.
So I wanted to know who's Keyva, how long have you been in business, and who are your most significant business partners using the
So
platform?
I can talk to that. This is Jesse. So Keyva has been around for a couple of years. We're a sister company to Evolving Solutions, as Anuj mentioned earlier. We're based in the Twin Cities, so Minneapolis, St. Paul area. Our sister company's been around, or our parent company's been around for about 25 years. Our focus is national, so we are focused, building out the Twin Cities area up and down the 35 corridor down towards Texas and focused nationally. And as far as our technology partners, one of the things that Anuj hit on very quickly is that we do, since we build integrations like this, we're a premier ISV of ServiceNow, Red Hat. We're partnering with HashiCorp. Those are kind of the major ones that we're working with at the moment in terms of building integrations. But that is, that's one of the core focuses of our business, is to be able to build out these integrations and do them in a way that they're supported and able to be used in a production capacity. So hopefully that answers your question.
So who would you say would be your like a very significant business partner today?
So, so are you talking from a vendor perspective? From a vendor perspective, we're an Apex, along with our sister company. We're an Apex partner of Red Hat. If you're familiar with the Apex program, that's kind of the top tier of service providers in North America for Red Hat. I would say, I'd point out first and foremost that is our major partnership.
Okay. So
Adam Pottle here from Red Hat, and I just wanted to say that you guys, I figured I'd talk for a second since I handled a lot of the inviting. You guys are absolutely a top Red Hat partner. We're happy to have your partnership, and looking forward to do more great things with Keyva in the future. And Keyva's solution here to everyone listening is fully vetted by Red Hat and ServiceNow. It's not just something Keyva brewed up in the backyard, but it's a great solution, and both Red Hat and ServiceNow stand behind it.
Hey, thanks, Adam. I appreciate that.
No problem.
great. So obviously we're on a hybrid platform, and we use cloud for scale. I wanted to know. I was under the impression that Ansible was a Red Hat solution. That's not the case?
No, Ansible is definitely a Red Hat solution, right? So Red Hat acquired Ansible back in 2015. Ansible itself as an automation engine, right? And this is, one of many automation engines. We just use it heavily because it's an open source product, and open source to enterprise, it's a one-to-one equivalency. So if you were to take it, adopt it, even if you have a Windows or predominantly Windows heavy environment, you can use it and you don't have to change anything. There's nothing you're missing, right? I don't know how much familiarity you have with a lot of other open source products that are out there, but a lot of them make you make very large architectural or design decisions, things like push versus pull, or you're going to go without a bunch of features like role-based access control, stuff like that. We really push with Ansible for organizations of all sizes, just because you don't have to buy it, Frank. And this is the Red Hat folks online. You don't have to buy it to get the value out of it. The thing is, you will buy it once you do get the value out of it, right? And so that's why we're showing it here, because it's so pervasive.
Yeah, and it's Adam here again on that note. I'd say probably 3/4 of Ansible installs do not automate open source products. They recommend they automate non-open source technology, as well as a lot of non-open shore pardon me, one of those days. A lot of non-open source shops find it very easy to plug and play with Ansible, like Jesse said.
Okay. And then my other question was, so is it Keyva?
Correct.
Keyva.
Yep.
Okay. So is it simply? I don't want to say simply, but I want to say in some capacity. Are you adding layers of functionality like to like a comprehensible UI, GUI or GUI? Like, do all the functions that Ansible provides can be managed by this Keyva GUI and much more? Is that
Yeah.
the goal? Is that
yep.
is that the business model?
No, so to your question, right, this is a specific certified integration from ServiceNow. And what this does, right, what it does is it makes all of the functionality of the Ansible automation platform from Red Hat available via service request catalog item, right? So the premise of the conversation is knocking down shadow IT, right? And the big thing that, Anuj talked about early on is that in order to do that, you need to give people as easy a way to request whatever capabilities they want, whatever systems they want. You need to make it as easy as it is to go to AWS, to go to Azure, to click a button and get it, right? And so the way you can do that is via your service request catalog. And what we provide is we provide a bidirectional certified integration between those things, because the thing that we found in clients of all sizes, right? Huge, small, you name it, right? Once you build that sort of bridge, if you build that bridge between request and fulfillment, people want to go across that bridge. So that bridge has to work, right? And the only way you can ensure that that bridge works is if you have a certified integration that's vetted and validated by both vendors on either side, of the bridge, right? It's like going from New Jersey to New York. Like, pick a bridge, right? People are going across it all the time. You're not swimming across the Hudson. You're taking the bridge, right? And people want to use it. It's very effective. It's very good. And that's what we do. That's what we built out. So as far as Ansible functionality, anything that you'd want to do in Ansible, anything that you might write or that you might want to do as a playbook is available from the service request catalog. The secondary question, right? So since we've built a module that talks back to ServiceNow from Ansible, it's far more fully featured than what you're going to find. There's an open source one that's out there right now, right? And you're welcome to use it. It just doesn't have everything that you need if you're serious about automating with Ansible and ServiceNow to talk to ServiceNow, right? It just doesn't have a lot of the functionality in it, right? So we've done. Go ahead.
So I think the key point here is that, anything you do using this mechanism is going to be auditable, right? That's the reason why shadow IT is happening, as we saw, is because there's no governance. Nobody's looking at who's consuming what from where, why are they consuming it, right? So this gives the organization a centralized gating mechanism for consuming, regardless of what automation is built in Ansible, whether Ansible provisions a system in the cloud, on-prem, regardless of the vendor, right? It gives you that bridge is essentially a gate for you to make sure all your requests are going through a centralized IT management system, and then they are available within the CMDB. All the assets you provisioned are monitored and available within the CMDB for you to audit against.
Okay. So let's talk about a real life experience. So I think we are. I don't know what you classify shadow AT as, but I think I get the concept, and we are monitoring, and we have complete control over our infrastructure. Like, there's no, it's a small shop. Well, not Kroger anymore, right? But we're a subsidiary of Kroger, and we run our own shop. We have our own on-prem equipment, and one of the things I was wondering about is if we're not giving access to, for example, like DBAs or development people to our resources, we're simply provisioning as they need it. How does this work? How does this concept work with that platform? Does that not work? Does that make sense?
This is meant to be on demand, and Andres, we can certainly set up a follow-on conversation with you to discuss in detail your use case. But yeah, this is absolutely on demand, right? The idea is, again, to make sure that there may be requests that you may not be aware of, or maybe you do have full control, but maybe there are some requests from your users, your app consumers, or whoever, that are going directly outside of your organization. Maybe not, right? But this is just the case that we've seen traditionally. So, but this solution is on demand. It is real time in a way, as real time as the automation can make it. But again, I would love to follow up with you offline and talk to you about your specific case.
Yeah, and just to follow up on that, right? So what we're seeing in organizations of all sizes is that without something like this, without an approved, hey, even if you need public cloud consumption, right? If you need to get something up in AWS, Azure, whatever, if you don't have an easy mechanism to do it that you can direct everyone through, right? That's your funnel. It is the case that someone's going to just run their credit card, right? You're going to run your credit card, get your instance, do whatever you need to do on it, and shut it down, right? And so you can't shut those things down until we're seeing this with our clients, right? You can shut that down if you have a gateway like this, where you can say, I can give you this functionality, even if you want to just go up to Azure or AWS or whatever, right? I can give you this functionality, but you have to come through our audited, supported gateway, right? Which can be the service request catalog, where you can say, I need these sorts of instances for my apps. Put them up there. Put them up in Azure. Put them up in, wherever.
And then you can only provision X amount of resources.
Sure. Right. I mean, again, right, because it's auditable, but it's totally governed, right? So if you're pushing, if you have the capability to do it, you can push everyone through your service request catalog, and then the service request catalog is what it is, right? You can do t-shirt sizing, you can do small, medium, large, you can make it as granular as you want, or whatever, right? You can abstract people away from all the other things like, I need to be on this tier of storage, or I need to be on our NetApp device, or whatever. You can decide that, right? As the IT team, you guys can collectively decide, this is the application workload that's going out there. Where's it going to sit? How are we going to provision it? And what's it going to look like, right? The whole idea is to make this far more governed, auditable, so that when your third-party auditors come in there, they don't just say, hey, what are you guys doing? You hand them a bunch of scripts that you ran, right? That doesn't work for anybody, right? The idea is that you have something that's third-party supported, where you can look at it. There's a whole audit trail through what you guys did, what's out there, how it works, and you can know that you're shutting that stuff down, right? And right now, it's been a problem for a long time, because so many IT organizations struggle with providing back the sorts of resources that people, in development especially, want to work on. They want, just kind of transient stuff that they can give me my system, let me build on it, let me churn on it, I'm going to give it throw it back, right? But if you're doing all that out in the public cloud, or if you're doing it all, outside of your IT process, you have really no idea what's actually happening out there. You have no idea what data is leaving your domain. You have no idea what's staying out there, what's persisting, all of that stuff, right? And you have no idea if you lose an employee, right? If someone just says, I'm done, or if you have a RIF or any other thing, you have no idea where all of that stuff went. I mean, we've had plenty of clients too who have had that circumstance where someone's left, and when they left, they had a bunch of stuff sitting on their Azure instance that was tied to them, not to the client, not to the company, right?
Like local, yeah, like local root accounts and things of that nature. I get it.
Yeah. So I mean, so there's a bunch of reasons why you would want to do this, right? And you need something like this in order to actually lock down your request mechanisms and say, hey, we're not going to reimburse you if you decide to just go out there and throw your credit card on AWS and get some S3 storage or whatever, right? You have to go through this system. This is our system.
And at the same time, we've actually attempted this scenario with devs, like web dev people, folks, associates, heroes, and they've completely like abused the system. Like when you know we didn't have any control, they consumed so much compute on cloud services that you know they didn't set them to shut off, etc. Things like that.
Sure. Okay. So
I get it.
As Anush said,
platform now.
you know, we're happy to have a follow-up conversation with you about what your organization specifically is doing and the challenges you're seeing there. You know, as we are with anybody else that's on the call here, right? You know, the idea is that we're trying to solve problems we know our clients have in a way that is repeatable, it's auditable, it's governable, it's something that you can do in enterprise production fashion, right? We're not spitballing stuff together here. We're putting together solutions that you as an IT enterprise can use to, you know, whether it's knocking down shadow IT, whether it's simply just making more services available to your user base, whatever the case may be, that's what we're out here and that's what we're trying to do. So, you know, I appreciate everyone joining the conversation today. You know, I know, you know, we all have a million different things that are going on right now, a million different challenges. We're all working from home, doing all that stuff. Like I said, if you have any questions about any of this stuff, we are very happy to do, you know, kind of virtual lunch and learns, walk through your specific use cases, how this sort of thing, right? It doesn't have to be ServiceNow. Walk through how this might work for you in your organization and talk to you about things that we're seeing out there as we work with our clients. We're very happy to do that, and we're very appreciative of everyone joining the call today.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you for your insight, and I look forward to having that call with you guys. Thank you.
Sounds good. We'll send a follow-up email to everybody, right? That has the collateral here, that has a link to the recording if you want to send it to your teams, anything like that. And as I said, it's very, you know, low pressure. We're happy to have lunch and learns with anybody that's on the team, on the call here, right? We've got tons of people from all over the place, so we're very happy to do that. And again, very appreciative of your time today. Anuj, anything else you want to talk to before we drop?
Nope, all good. Feel free to send any questions you may have. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thanks again, everyone. Appreciate it. Good afternoon.
Thank you.